to actually bring her down. She's doing a much better job of it than I am, actually, because I'm not very good at it at all. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, I wish we knew. We're going to be covering some of the things in Wendy has a vast experience dealing with all sorts of businesses, from micro businesses up to really sort of large businesses, people dealing with lots of staff. And along the way, she's specialised in so many things. She knows mindset stuff as well as the numbers. She also does so much work with women in business. And in fact, she's going to be speaking at my big Women in Business Big Show event. In fact, she's got 2 speaking slots I've managed to rope her into. She's going to be talking about how to set up and structure your business, as well as some of the mindset and numbers and what happens sort of behind the scenes in our own brains and in our own sort of subconscious that perhaps stops us getting the results that we deserve, actually. Isn't it a case of what we deserve? Okay, we're going to start off with our usual slot, which obviously Wendy knew nothing about, because if we told guests what we did, well, it wouldn't be quite so much fun, would it? So, Adelle, I don't know. Have you landed yet? But you snuck away to Ibiza, didn't you?
I did. I landed in Ibiza with a bump, and I landed back here in the cold. So yeah, I am back, just colder.
Yeah. Well, never mind, eh? Yeah, I'm not all bitter and twisted. I hope you had a lovely, lovely time.
I did, after 24 hours. But I'll add that to my lessons learned.
Yes. Well, so what do we normally do? Round about this time, we have 3 things that we talk about. We talk about what we've learnt this week. We talk about our recommended tool, our tool of the week. I'm going to bring one in 1 week. And we also talk about any book or resource or video, something that we've watched that we have found useful that we can pass on to you. So, have you got something that you've learnt this week?
I have. So my lessons learned is, I know we've talked in previous shows about travelling, and I have gone travelling and noticed that, there was a lot more paperwork and out of sorts. But the bit I learned is that I landed into a hotel that had the retreat in the title, and realised that there wasn't substantial Wi-Fi. And after having a meltdown in reception, she said, "Madam, this is a retreat. Wi-Fi is not the priority." And so what I learned is, do you know what? I can unplug, and I did for 4 days, and it was fine. But I just had to get over that fact first. And do you know what? We talk about controlling. When I did get back onto tech, nobody had died. The emails were there, and my team were fine, and my clients were okay.
So you were unnecessary, basically.
Yeah, I was actually, yeah.
Surplus to requirements.
Surplus to requirement.
No effect when missing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit of a hard lesson, that one, isn't it, actually?
Yeah.
Like things run smoother when you're not actually poking your nose in.
And I
get this quite a lot.
Yeah. Actually, when you're not here, it's easier because you don't change your mind so much. Okay.
Yeah, I've found that if I actually remove myself from what's happening, very often things go an awful lot smoother.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what I've learnt this week. I had a really interesting week because I opened up a brand new venue. So I was running 2 events in the one weekend, different venues. I don't know if you're in the UK, you understand that we haven't had any petrol, or we'll call it a petrol crisis, which means it's difficult for exhibitors to get to the venues. It's also difficult for visitors to get to the venues. We were restricted with what we could go and get ourselves. We have shopping, things that we need to, we need to go to the wholesalers. There's things that we need to get in. Our signs didn't arrive. There was just so much stuff that was wrong. But to be honest, I'm going to be honest here, even if we had enough petrol, okay, we still wouldn't have got everything done right. And I found this lovely, lovely quote. And it's by, I don't actually know if this is a man or a woman, but they are the host of, or one of the hosts of the American programme Saturday Night Live. And it's Lorne Michaels. And their quote is, "The show doesn't go on because it's ready. The show goes on because it's 11:30.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's good.
And I thought, yep. And actually, how many times do I do that? I just have to do it because it's the time to do it. It's a bit like this show. If it wouldn't matter how many times I sat here. If I sat here and wrote questions out and did things, I'd never be ready for it. Yeah. And what amount of preparation can you actually do to go, it's going to be a fantastic show? You can't. There's nothing you could do because you can't. There are some things you just simply cannot prepare for. You just can't. And so it's 11 o'clock and we go live, whatever. As you know, I could be on the floor, couldn't I? And we still go live.
We do.
It doesn't matter. That's what happens. So that's what I've learnt this week. Have you learnt anything this week?
Oh, I'm always learning stuff all the time. I've just been to Amsterdam for a few days, and what I've learnt is always be prepared. You never know when those opportunities are going to arise. So while I was over there, I ended up talking to somebody, as you do, queuing outside the loos. And if I tell you now that I have my first Dutch client, which was just incredible. I wasn't prepared.
You met your client in the toilet.
I met my client in the toilet. I turned up and I was wearing old jeans and scruffy and soaking wet. And so I've now got my first Dutch client. So always be prepared.
And don't make any assumptions. Just because you wouldn't expect to meet your client in the toilet queue, would you?
No, not at all. Not at all. So, so we'll see where it goes. So I could be breaking into Holland.
I like because you haven't got enough to do. Oh, I don't know. Should we put Jess on the spot again? Look, have you learnt anything this week, Jess?
The people who pay less cost the most.
Yes. That's very, very true, actually.
Yes, it is.
That is very true. I think that's something that you're very aware of, isn't it?
I was just about to offer her a job.
Yeah.
She's got it.
I'll tell you what. You keep your hands. You keep your job offers to yourself over there. All right. Okay. Tool of the week. What have you learnt tool-wise?
Traditional, but I've gone back to it because I realised I wasn't using it about, and that is time blocking in my diary and a bit of batching. So if I've got to do some articles or write scripts or do some videos, I do them together, and I didn't realise how I'd got diary drift. So my tool is literally, I've gone back to time blocking and batching my diary, and I did that with pen and paper because I had no Wi-Fi, and it was therapeutic. I loved it. And so when I did get back, I time blocked it with a good old pencil and a pen. Yeah, that's what I did.
Time blocking. I like that. Wendy?
Mine is, nothing particularly new, I'm sure, but it's a new thing for me. I now book in time with me and my husband because I suddenly found that work just sort of dribbled into every moment of the 24 hours or the 20 hours you're awake. And so now I've got time now with my husband. Sorry, hang on a minute.
20 hours.
Listen, really, you managed to... Not many people who have businesses sleep more than 4 or 5 hours a night. So now I've got a bit of time blocked out to do stuff for myself. And so that was my thing. When we were in Amsterdam, I suddenly realised, and you are so right, the world continues to go when we're not there. I kept phoning my office and they said, what do you want? And when I came back, they said, it was so quiet when you were gone and we realised that you're the problem. So, so I'm booking another holiday very quickly.
It's a bit worrying when that happens, but it can also be quite liberating, can't it?
Yes. Yeah, completely.
Delegating and explaining what I want is something I find particular. That I find that so difficult, actually. Yeah. Such a blockage for me. Explaining how it is I want something done, and also getting that system out of my head and getting it so that somebody else can work it.
I think that's because we often lead our businesses with our hearts. It's a passion-driven thing for us, and therefore it's very hard to communicate that to somebody else. Or it's like trusting someone with your baby, isn't it?
I'm not sure that for me, it's actually that the system, very often the system is actually in my head. So I have tools that I use, but how I use them and the order that I use them in and what I put onto them and how I use them is in my head, and it can be difficult to get that out. And if it's something that's critical, so for me that's like booking people into events, it's critical that happens correctly. If it doesn't happen correctly, well, it's a right mess, actually. And because it's so much of it is my system in my head with my fingers pressing the button, it's a really difficult leap to actually sit somebody down and go, OK, let's try this. I've sort of got to try it with 2 systems first. It's because I haven't set it up properly in the first place. So it's nobody's fault apart from my own. Anyway, that's that lesson learnt. OK, book video resource. You can go first.
So for me,
Adelle.
I did my homework on holiday because I had no Wi-Fi. So I had 3 books. So the first one, it was brilliant, and it was the XX Brain by Dr. Lisa Mosconi. And what it's looking at is some really great groundbreaking research in the difference between the female brain and the male brain. Yes, it is linked to my day job, but it was just nice to sit and read a proper book and really look at the research and how women's health has changed over the last 30 years. So yeah, it was good. So I did my homework. I've got some more books, but I'll save them for future episodes.
Okay. She's just been different. You will have forgotten them by then. Okay, my one. I've got one, and it's my resource, and my book is actually my journal, and it's connecting with myself and spending the time to sit down and write and get some thoughts out. It's been rather busy over the last few weeks because I've got lots of events that have been changing venues, lots of events that have been changing dates. It's nobody's fault. It's just stuff that's been happening because of, as we're reopening from COVID, people are finding that stuff has gone wrong in buildings and it needs to be sorted out, and there just aren't parts available, and sometimes there aren't people to come in and do the mending, and so everything has to move and change. And that's actually really quite stressful because there's loads of people to ring up, loads of people to connect with, loads of loads of different stuff that has to be altered. All of your marketing has to change. And I've just been race, and I felt I didn't have any time to sit down and just get some stuff written down. And that's what I've done, is I've got my pen and paper out and just sat down and reconnected with what's going on and myself.
Brilliant.
So sometimes that, and you have to force yourself to do it. I mean, you have to sort of, for me, I have to be at like crunch point, shrieking and running around. And the other tool, which are we at tools? Have we done tools? We've got. I'm all over the place. The tools is the EFT and tapping, which is something that I use, and sometimes I forget to use it or I don't use it. But tapping and EFT is such a brilliant way of calming down and reconnecting. And if you can't meditate, I have a lot of trouble meditating. My meditation is action, and action doesn't mean you're actually doing anything useful. It just means you're running around doing a lot of crap very often. So EFT tapping is a way of sort of calming that down. Have we done everything now?
We have.
Oh, that's well. We better get on to some. We better get on to the really interesting stuff now, haven't we? So, Wendy, welcome properly to the show. Wendy Tetley, founder of Achieving Clarity, Accountants Plus an awful lot more. Can you just give us a little bit of context about what it is that you do, what Achieving Clarity does, and the sorts of clients that you work with?
Of course. I probably ought to start by telling you a little bit about my background and how I got to be doing all these different things. I used to work for the prison service and had a great career. I was so fortunate, and I was with them quite a long time. And while I was there, they offered to pay for lots of different training courses that were my job.
When you say you were at the prison service, were you in the offices or were you a warden?
No, I was actually a senior manager in prison. So
got you.
So I had lots to do with prisoners, and But I started off as a finance director, as they called it, of one of the Sheppey prisons. And by then, I'd already trained to be an accountant. Did that for a while and showed a bit of aptitude for seeing where we could make cost savings and things. So I got headhunted and moved to area office, where I looked after lots of prisons in Kent and going around looking for cost saving strategies. So I learned lots about process re-engineering, and that was fascinating. And then the world changed, as it does with the civil service all the time, and I took on HR for the whole region. So we're now talking about sort of 13 prisons it was at the time, and I was in charge of HR. So I went off and they paid for me to do my HR qualification, which was great. So I'm CIPD accredited. And at the time, they started doing some changes. So we did some psychometric training and project management training. And then there was a big project to cluster 3 prisons on the Isle of Sheppey. So, and they got me involved because of my HR background. And very quickly, because of my accountancy background as well, I ended up becoming ultimately the project manager at the last stages, which was absolutely fascinating, as I'm sure you can imagine. So that involved sort of putting forward bids to Treasury and saving a lot of money and reinvesting a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, I didn't do it all. I was just coordinating some of it, and there was some great brains around the table. And then I was offered the job to take over as what was called the head of reducing reoffending on Sheppey. So I had £38 million budget. I had 380 staff, and I looked after all the services that were delivered to prisoners in the 3 prisons as this new clustered unit. So that really tested my skills in all fronts, and it was absolutely amazing because we were the first of its kind in the UK in terms of clustered prisons. But as you do, you're ready for your next challenge, and I'd wanted to leave and do something for myself, and I was determined that there must be something. My dad used to have an accountant who was incredibly stuffy, and we all used to have to dress up and tidy the house. So I was determined I wasn't going to be like that. So just for your listeners, if they were to look at me now, I'm sitting here in a pair of shorts and an old T-shirt, because no, seriously, I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to be somebody. So I plucked up the courage. My husband nearly had a heart attack because I was the main wage earner, and left and set up Achieving Clarity. And it very quickly became apparent that it wasn't just the accountancy skills that people needed, and definitely needed. It was this whole range of experience that I had as sort of I almost look at it as big corporate level, but actually were skills that small businesses could benefit from. So that's how it came about.
So one of the first things, as you were talking, as you were speaking there, and some of the things that I was thinking about, and yes, the accountant, so my father had that sort of accountant, and actually when we started our business, we used him.
Yes.
And it was the classic sort of smelly breath, brown suit, lots of files on a desk, and quite dusty sort of office. And really, I suppose what he did, and nobody will know who he is, so it doesn't really matter. Really, what he did was he just juggled some stuff.
Yes.
And you know, there was a set of numbers, and numbers went in and numbers came out, and then that was the end of it. To be honest, there was nothing else happened in between. And
there's no doubt about it. You know, I have great respect for these people, you know, who I think of as sort of old school accountants. Most of them don't even have calculators, you know, the old mental arithmetic and the paper and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but sorry, I don't want to pay somebody.
Yes.
I don't want to pay somebody to add stuff up.
No,
there's spreadsheets. I can there's other stuff I can use to add stuff up, isn't there?
Completely.
I can use my own calculator, and I can just put stuff into a spreadsheet. If I'm going to send stuff down to somebody who's just going to sit there and add it up, I'll stick it. I might as well just send it onto my own spreadsheet. I'll add it up.
Although I would say that I think we have to remember that not everybody has the same skill set. Some people, do you know, they turn up with their little carrier bag and say, "Here, Wendy, I don't want to know anything. Just make the tax bill as low as possible," and that's cool. And I see them once a year. They know I'm there if they've got any questions. But you know, there's the far more discerning people who are running their business who want to know a bit more and don't realise or don't understand that, in my opinion, that's what an accountant should be about. And that I have to say, that's where I put the success of Achieving Clarity. We started in 2011. We've got over 300 clients now, and which I'm so pleased. And all of them through recommendation. I've never, I advertised once for 40 quid. Didn't even get a phone call. That was when I first started. But yeah, it's all been through recommendations. So, so that's what Achieving Clarity was set up to do. And accountancy to start with, and then gradually saw that there was, people needed HR advice. My husband's a health and safety consultant, and he had a job, but I used to use and abuse any spare time he had to help me with the business
until he had to leave.
And eventually I couldn't do it anymore.
So I think the point I was making, and I forgot about it along the way, was that when you are starting a business and you get to the point where you think, actually, okay, I need an accountant, it's actually to understand that not all accountants do exactly the same thing.
Totally.
And to find out what your accountant does and doesn't do. So are they acting as a bit like a bookkeeper plus, where you are throwing receipts at them and they're just putting them, they're organising them and submitting something to the tax account, to the tax people? Or are they discussing your business with you? Are they able to offer ancillary and peripheral services? And sometimes those services might actually be integral. They may not be peripheral. You know, are they offering you HR advice? Are they able to sort of broaden it out and support your business in different ways, apart from you just throwing a lot of receipts at them? And it's, I think, about making a decision early on about the sort of support that you need.
Yeah. I think also it's about having those conversations, because a lot of us think of accountants just saving tax.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I did at the last Women in Business show that you did, when I did my little talk to people, and people really sort of said it resonated with them, was what are you looking for when you're choosing your accountant? What are you looking for? You know, and the first thing is, and by far the most important, is you need to feel comfortable with them. You know, if you saw the people who come into my office when I first meet them, and they're so apprehensive and nervous, you know, it's almost like I'm going to judge them or whatever. And, you know, within seconds, you know, we've got a bit of a rapport going and that sort of thing. And you know, it's cool. But that's the main thing, is making sure that you can actually communicate with them. And then it's actually, are you just a small fish in a massive pond? Because one of the things that I'm very clear about is I don't take on really large businesses. I'm offered, and of course they'd be quite lucrative, but it's not where my heart is. And if you take those on, often they soak up so much time that you haven't got the time available then to sort of spend with your individuals. So every person, we know who they are, we know what they look like, they could pop in for a cup of coffee, and I don't care if we have 1,000 clients, that will always be what runs through Achieving Clarity, is that we know our clients, and they're not just numbers. You need, this is my big bugbear, is that not all accountants are qualified either. So you can call yourself an accountant and never having done any qualifications whatsoever.
Oh, do you know, I did not know
Yeah.
that. So at the moment we're in the UK, but I am mindful that 50% of our listeners at least are in the USA, are in the United States and Canada or Australia. I don't know what the situation is out there. I don't know if you do.
No, I don't.
Wendy, either. Nearly. But for goodness sake, check. You know, just because somebody calls themselves something, and I think this could probably go across the board for all sorts of things, couldn't it? Just because somebody says, I'm an accountant, I'm an HR, I'm a law expert, I'm a legal expert, does not mean they are. Does not mean that they're qualified. And in the UK, I did not know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I could call myself an accountant.
You could tomorrow. Yep.
And I wouldn't, but I could. I could call myself an accountant, and I could set up, and people could be coming to me, and I could submit their stuff to the government place,
HMRC,
isn't it? HMRC, and have no qualification behind me at all.
Absolutely. And it's just, well, it beggars belief, really. I always say to people, would you go to a doctor who hadn't been at medical school for 5 years, you know? And I think that's just really important. So qualifications is a big thing.
So what's the difference between an accountant and a chartered accountant?
Right, basically, an accountant is anybody. A chartered accountant means that you've got membership status of one of the chartered institutes. So I myself am a chartered management accountant. And for that, I had to do 3 years training, and I had to get CPD every year, all that sort of thing. So every year I'm tested to see if I'm still up to the job. Which I think is completely appropriate.
So when you're looking, when you're looking for your accountant, you're looking for, okay, do I feel comfortable with this person? And it's okay actually to say no, I don't.
Yeah.
It's not an accountant's job. It's not anybody's job. If you're in business and you're looking to work with somebody else to help support your business, if you don't feel 100% comfortable with them, well, just turn around and walk away. That's the beauty of running your own business. If somebody's snotty, if somebody's too far up themselves and what they're intent on doing is making you feel small or uncomfortable, say thank you very much and goodbye. It doesn't mean they're any better. In fact, it probably means they're not any better because they have to undermine you.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, so turn around and walk away and question the qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure that you're comfortable at asking questions without being made to feel small. I mean, I know that goes on because this is your business, you know, and you want to know.
So no sucking. Anybody who's sucking through their teeth.
Yeah,
It's it's when you take your car to the mechanic. I'll tell you what, any sucking through the teeth. Yeah. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Yeah, completely. The other thing is make sure that you know what you're paying because. Very recently, I had a person who was chasing £1,000 rebate from HMRC, £1,000. The accountant sent them a bill. Are you ready for this? £22,000 to do the work, to get a £1,000 rebate from HMRC. £22,000. I know.
Oh, sorry. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that, would you?
Not at all. No, I mean, just outrageous.
So the client didn't know beforehand that it was going to be £22,000 to chase the £1,000 rebate.
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't know what to say.
Well, it's just unbelievable. But of course, I mean, we're taking action accordingly. But But that's the sort of thing, hidden extras. So make sure that you understand, because very often don't expect your accountant to do it all for 50 quid, because we have to do a lot of liaising with HMRC, which is very time consuming and very bureaucratic. But yeah, so it's not always cheapest is best, 100%, but also make sure you know what you're getting for your money.
And the other thing is that accountants do other things just apart from the book. So it could be that there are things that need to be sent back to the government, aren't there?
Yes,
stuff that needs to happen.
That's exactly right.
You can tell, can't you? You can tell things like, what are they, like certificates that have to go back.
Yeah, that's right. So dividend certificates and confirmation statements.
And that's also the sort of thing that potentially your accountant may or may not do. So they may also be your registered office. So you need to these are all sorts of things that you need to find out beforehand, is exactly what is it that this person is going to be doing for you, or this organisation is going to be doing, and what else is there to do, what other obligations do you have as part of running your business that your accountant may or may not be doing. Because you don't have to do that, do you? You don't have to. I mean, and you charge. It's not something that you do for nothing. It's a service, and people pay for it.
Most people, in my experience, once they've got to know us, they want us to manage it for them. They're so busy running their businesses and doing what they are fantastic at. They want us to. So we actually manage a timetable for everyone. So all of my clients have their own little timetable, which we send to them. But then we prompt them. We need this paperwork. This needs to be done. We're happy to do it for you. And then they don't have to think about it. And that's really important, because you've got enough on your plate when you're running your own business.
So what are your obligations as a business to report? What do you have to send in to the government and other organisations? And what is your accountant going to do or not do as far as that is concerned? Because you don't want to make assumptions that stuff is happening and then find out that actually it hasn't happened and it's fallen through the cracks and you're potentially in trouble or having to play catch up.
Yeah, totally. So that actually forms part of your first conversation with your accountant. Can you just go through exactly what I need to do, what we need to do with our company? Ask those questions and don't feel uncomfortable about doing it. Of course, great Google, but also see how much your professional.
Sometimes, though, the issue is actually not knowing what it is you don't know.
Yeah, totally.
So if the accountant says, oh, well, yes, and I'll send this in for you, fine. But if you don't know what else potentially needs to go in, so you're going to have to do some research beforehand, aren't you, and find out what it is you need to know so that you at least have an idea of when the accountant comes back and says, well, I do that, but I don't do that. Is anything else missing? Yeah.
I think the other thing is about being incredibly upfront and honest about stuff, because we can be extremely helpful. I mean, I see myself as a partner to all my clients, so they will come. So very recently I had a late night mother and son position where there was falling out over the business, and so it's a little bit of mediation almost, but you know what, by the time they left we had it absolutely sorted. We're sorting out the shares, we're sorting out a share agreement for them, everyone's happy. So be very upfront, even if you think, crikey, this isn't something the accountant can help with. You'd be surprised at what structures we can put in place that solve some of that.
I think that very often accountants are like an awful lot of other sort of people that support businesses, is if they approach it in that particular way, they get to learn an awful lot of stuff.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's the case, isn't it? They get to know so much stuff about business, but also they can bring experiences of what they've come across with other people, like that falling out, with fallings out and discrepancies and things that can potentially go wrong, is all experience and knowledge that they can bring in to potentially support your business.
Yeah. And we're learning all the time. I very much believe in cross-pollination. If one of my clients picks up something, I have this open door. If you find something, you think you know something, or you've got a suggestion, talk to me about it and I'll check it out. And if it's good, I'm going to tell everybody else about it, because people do pick up different things. Every sort of trade industry has slight nuances. That cross-pollination. My mantra is small businesses should support each other as much as possible. Yeah, we've all got to make a living, but it goes beyond that, I think.
So picking your accountant, visit. Are you comfortable? Have the conversations. What do they do? What's their experience and what is their qualifications?
Absolutely.
And I'm also a great one with, somebody not having to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients, actually just being able to start off. I think your knowledge and your approach very often means as much, if not more, than the fact that you've been doing it for 40 years and you've got 5 million clients.
Completely. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So don't make too many judgments about what has gone on with clients before. Just make sure you ask the right questions and that you're getting the right sort of buzz and feedback and that it's a comfortable relationship, because it's a relationship that you're going to be paying for. And it's a relationship that you want to move forward. You know, it can be quite tricky getting an accountant that fits with your business, can't it?
Oh,
you don't want to be going out and getting another one.
It's a very personal thing, you know, because not everybody will fit with you. But you want this, you know, you want somebody who is going to be there to help you on the journey right the way. So somebody who's going to be really interested in your business. And sometimes I almost think I'm as passionate about people's businesses as they are, because I know that I have got some skills and things that will help them to get to the next level. So, I mean, obviously that's not all 300 clients at once. It tends to be, you know, odd ones that come to me with something and suddenly let's do everything we can to help them.
So let's talk about women. Let's talk about women in business and women and money and women and numbers, because I know that you have a load of experience from two sides of it. Number one, you are a businesswoman.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have it from your own personal experience. You also work with a lot of business women, and you advise a lot of business women, and you support business women. So women, money, women and business, women and numbers.
Actually, do you know, it is so, there is such a gender divide. I have to say that. Women generally have a completely different approach to some of my, you know, the guys that run businesses. First of all, they absolutely want to understand and are open to learning and are happy to ask those questions. You know, they're not worried about looking a fool or, you know, oh God, I can't say that's a stupid question. They're happy. They want to know. And they're happy to ask. So I think they almost come across as, look, here I am, teach me, tell me what I need to know. Whereas some of the guys, dare I say, there's nothing you can teach me, I know it all, you know.
We're saying nothing.
or actually I'm too embarrassed to ask, you know, it's a sign of weakness that I'm asking a question. So ladies are much more...
Do you think... I'm not sure if you can actually answer this question, but you do have men in your team.
I do.
So do you think that happens, that women are happy to ask the, if you like, inverted commas, and of course you can't see me doing this because we're on air and it's not the TV, those stupid questions because you're a woman?
No, because they ask anybody in my team those. I think it is, I personally, I mean, obviously, I worked in a very macho environment for all those years in the prison service, and it was usually the ladies that were most up for development, senior management development, that sort of thing. And what I called your very sort of progressive gentlemen who have gone on to be superstars in the prison service. And the more macho culture was, you know, why am I here? Why do I need to learn that? But so no, and the people I've chosen to be part of my team, as you would expect, are people who work exactly like that.
Are you able to say what women might consider a stupid question?
What women?
Yeah. So have you had women who sit in front of you and go, this might sound like a stupid question, but what is is there a stupid question that comes up a lot?
Most of them say, here you go. This is what most of them say. I know I might sound really stupid because I don't understand this stuff. And it's almost this feeling that they have to understand everything about it instantly. And therefore, if they're not in this position of knowing it all, that they're uncomfortable about asking. Not uncomfortable about asking, sorry, but that they are failing in some way. They're lesser, but more than happy to learn. So we almost have to get over that hurdle first, you know. Actually, okay. I know it sounds really stupid, but I don't know about this stuff. Well, that's cool.
But that's sort of okay, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So women want to know.
Yep.
They're happy to sort of own up that they don't know, but they want to know it all. Is that a problem, actually, wanting to know it all?
It is. One thing I just going back to that last point, Sian, I think it's about assuring ladies that it's a safe environment for them to ask things. And I think that's why that sort of first question sticks out in my mind. I know I sound stupid because I don't know all this stuff. Now, there's an opportunity there for somebody who's perhaps, less in tune with this sort of thing. Might turn and say, okay, fine, well, just come back and ask me questions. Whereas, of course, I go straight in, and people like me would go straight in and say, that's fine, come on, what do you want to know? Let's talk about it. I can teach you stuff. So it's allowing that door to be opened.
So... Actually, that is a real. I think that is a real dividing point when you're going along and you are picking who your accountant is. I think there is a big difference between, hey, I feel a little bit stupid because I don't know this stuff, and somebody who says that's okay, that's not a problem. We don't expect you to. What do you want to know? Open door, in we go. And somebody else who may go, oh, that's not a problem. That's not a problem because that's what I do. Mm-hmm. Now, that's actually a really subtle difference, isn't it?
Completely. Absolutely.
So one is saying, actually, you don't know, and I'm not going to tell you.
Absolutely.
And you will just carry on being the silly little whatever, because that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And you're not going to understand. You're just going to pay me the money.
Yes.
And somebody else who is saying, that's okay. Where are we going to start?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
That is a really big, because that relationship and how that relationship starts off with your accountant is going to either put you in a position of power, with learning stuff and growing and understanding what's happening, and actually being in a submissive position of relying on somebody to do something you don't understand.
Totally.
Adele.
That is exactly the reason why I changed my accountant from the first one to the second one. But I accepted the first one because I was new. I'd come from corporate where everything was done for me into this. And then I felt uncomfortable about asking some questions and then felt uncomfortable with it back. And I'm thinking, actually, I now feel stronger. I want a relationship where I can have a discussion rather than feel like I'm bringing my exam papers. Yeah. And then that way, I want that relationship, so I can ring them and say, look, I'm going to be doing this, and I say to her, just keep me out of jail and keep the tax man happy, because I have lots of big ideas, and I can pick up the phone, have that conversation, and feel open about it. But it really resonated with me because that is why I had to swap.
Do you know? And until now, we're just having that discussion. I had never realised that there was that difference. And I think that's really, really important. The answer that you get, the feedback that you get from that admission, if you like, that you don't understand this stuff
completely. And actually, I think we've just brought up something else which is interesting, which is you go with the accountant. With you it was your dad's accountant, and Adele, wherever yours came from. But it's okay to leave your accountant. It's okay to move on. But because for a lot of people, especially when there's been a bit of, mysticism involved, we don't really know what happens with these finances.
It's a bit sort of smoke and mirrors, isn't it? Just lift it up, level appear underneath it.
It just perpetuates that fear and lack of confidence with regard to finances and taxes and stuff, which means that you then hang on to this person. Whereas, in fact, it's a brave decision, but I promise you, if you do, it is so worthwhile because, you are the paying customer at the end of the day, and this is your business. So I think it's great. I have that all the time where people phone me up and say, Wendy, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think it will mean? And I get involved in all sorts of things. Should I buy a new van? Should I make my mum a shareholder? Actually, we're getting divorced. Now what happens? All that sort of thing. And that's really how it should be.
Because it's critical, isn't it? We can't, as much as we might want to, I don't think we can divorce our business from our lives. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I am my business. My business is me.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly the case with a lot of ladies because lots of us, I do lots of Zoom calls with people. I do a lot of sort of help with other groups, female groups as well, and often they've got little Johnny sitting in their lap when we're Zooming and talking about some stuff, and it does have to merge, So no, I think that is really important.
It is. It's critical, isn't it? It's a your business. My business is personal. It's not so. I didn't buy it.
Yeah, I built it.
Yes, I built it.
But that actually,
not quite sure how or what I'm up to. It's rather chaotic, but
it's yours.
It's yours. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it comes from my heart.
Yes, totally.
It comes from my heart.
And that's where you asked me few questions back before I digress onto something different. But you said to me, what do you think is one of the biggest things for ladies? And I would say that because we are so passionate about our businesses, and it does come from the heart, and it alludes to the conversation we had before we went on air, that we actually find it really difficult to delegate. So first of all, we're happy to ask the questions once we know we're in a safe environment to do so, and we're open to development. But also, we think we have to know it all or understand it all, and we have to do it all. Whereas you have to, learn that there are people around that you can trust to help you.
Yeah, for me, I'm talking personally now, I don't want to do it all. I actually really don't want to do it all. But sometimes having the systems in place where you can hand it over to somebody else is a difficult thing.
Yes.
So if you are able to, I think there are some things that your accountant does that if they know what they're doing, they can just take off your hands. It's not your system. The way that the government works and what has to be returned to the government to run my business, I haven't invented that. I haven't come up with it. It's a standard thing. And I think if you can hand that over, I don't have to be involved with that, do I?
No. And all you're interested in, or you should be interested in from a business point of view, is what's coming at the end. Yeah, by all means, if you want to understand the mechanics, but you don't want to labour yourself with doing it all yourself.
I just want to plug the plug in. I don't need to understand how it's all wired up.
When I first started my business, I thought I could do it all, and I thought it was my job to do it all. I thought I couldn't trust anyone to do anything. I thought everyone would rip me off, and I didn't know because I wasn't an intelligent consumer. I tried to write my own website. Now, Sian, you know my IT sort of ability. You can write it on the back of a postage stamp. But if I tell you that within 3 weeks I had this passable website of some description, God knows what happened to it. But I was absolutely in tears because it wasn't what I wanted. And then I realised, what I could have earned in those 3 weeks. And that was a real eye-opener for me. And ever since then, I haven't felt the need to do that.
Poke your nose in.
Yeah, because there's people around. And people can be trusted. I had you always think, everybody's out for themselves. That's so not true.
No.
Small businesses are around, help each other a lot.
You're right. Adele.
I was going to build on that because I was talking to some women at the beginning of the week and I'm falling into that trap where you want to keep hold of it. And then you go, well, actually, you can hand it off. And then it comes down to, I say, well, how much do you earn per hour versus potentially out, offering the services? Then we end up back in a vicious loop because then we come back to the M word, which is, oh, well, yeah, that's my hourly rate, but should I be charging it? And should I? So you end up with, well, actually, you're charging this is that. So it comes back to that M word. And I said, look, you've got to break the cycle with that because you can't do it all, but you've got to stop getting hung up on your price per hour versus what they're charging, and that's their service, and it's okay, and don't feel guilty. Hand over the money and still feel guilty.
Yeah,
I do find it a really interesting, but what I found is that is been a common theme that I've had over the last few weeks, and you've got to say, I stand by my price per hour, and it's okay to get somebody else to do my ironing, or do my accounts, or cook my food. It's okay.
And in fact, in fact, you're supporting another family when you do that, aren't you?
Yeah,
you're supporting somebody else. You're supporting somebody else's lifestyle.
Exactly.
And there are some people who like cleaning houses. There are some people who love doing ironing. I'm not one of them.
No, me neither.
But there are people. I know people who do ironing because they find it therapeutic.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We all do something.
Business owners, more women in business, and that's what I say. But when you put that fresh lens on it and take it away from that, but I find with women, I have to constantly reframe this conversation.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat about numbers. So I think wherever we are in the world, whatever we're doing, whatever our tax system is, there are certain numbers that we need to know in our business. And I'm just terrible at this. See, once again, I'm using this as my personal personal knowledge session. You see,
personal coaching.
Yes, personal coaching. I do this quite a lot. So, what numbers do you? So, imagine I'm starting out in my business. What numbers do I need to understand?
Okay. The first thing, absolutely, before you start out in your business, is you need to be looking to see what money you need to earn. So many people start at the other end. This is how much I'm going to earn. Actually, what's your bare minimum? What do you need to live on? What do you need to pay your rent, your mortgage, your gas, to feed your children, your insurances, etc.? Because that should be your baseline budget. If you're not going to make that within a certain period, and we'll talk about that in a moment, then do you know what? You need to rethink. That's the first thing. So once you've got that, we've got our sort of our ground zero, if you like. We know where we're starting from. Then on top of that, it's actually one of my aspirations. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Do I want to be sailing a yacht around the world? Or do I want to just know that I've had time with my kids and I've been able to juggle work and being with my children or being with my parents or, whatever. Or do I just want a bigger, better business that's going to pay for me to be able to retire in absolute elaborate, sort of lavish comfort? So you need to decide what your dreams are as well, because between what you need to earn and those dreams, there's a path, and that's what your finances have to support. You'd be amazed at how many people haven't even given that any consideration. So if you are looking for this elaborate lifestyle, I just had a client this week who didn't want to grow the business, is absolutely terrified of taking on anybody else to help him. So he came into my office and I said, where do you want to be? And he said, well, actually, I want a really nice lifestyle when I retire. And I said, so how are you going to do that? I said, you're exhausted now. You've got more clients than you can deal with. You can't service everybody. Yeah, are you going to earn any more money by just taking on more work? And he said, well, no. And I said, well, that really is your answer. If that's your goal at the end, to be much richer and to have a better sort of standard of living in the future, you've got to make some changes. And he texted me that night and said, actually, do you know what? That's all I keep thinking about is now I know what I want out of it, I've got to let go of some of those inhibitions. So I think that's really key, okay, for everybody, regardless of where you are around the world. And then you've got to look at your real figures. So I've got a new business at the moment that I'm just doing some work with, who came to me saying they were going to make millions. And, of course, they're going to be buying stuff and selling it. So we've talked about profit margins, so how much profit they're going to make on their sale. And, of course, they do the typical, I can buy it for 50 quid and I can sell it for 75. That's great, 25 pounds profit. That's amazing. And then I said, okay, so what about the wages that you want to take out yourself? Oh, that's fine, Actually, what about the insurance that you're going to have to pay for the building, the rent, the blah, 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 blah. So we went through all of the costs, and in the end, it turns out they would have had to sell about 1,500 of these widgets every week to be able to afford all of their costs, plus take a salary for themselves.
So when we're buying and selling things we can pick up, widgets.
Yep.
You've got the cost you either buy it in or you make it at, and then the cost that you sell it at, and that's fine. That's one aspect of it. But then, of course, you have overheads.
Absolutely.
You have to talk to people on the telephone. You may have to email them. So now you need a computer. You might need to store these things or make them. So now you may need a building to do it in. You may need to deliver them, or you may need to post them. So you've got your overheads, which cover absolutely everything that you're doing. Because you have to pay for if you have an office, you have to pay for your office, whether you sell one widget nut or 20,000.
Yep.
So you've got your offices, your phones, all of your overheads, and then you've got the costs, the direct costs that are associated with, I bought one widget nut for £5, I've sold one widget nut for 10.
Yep. So and of course that's your gross profit margin is your sales price less your direct costs. So in other words, if you sell more, you actually have to purchase more. So they go up and down equally. Or relatively equally. So that's your direct costs. And then you have all the overheads, which then gives you your net profit. And that's the one that people completely underestimate. And oftentimes we can think that we're not making very much money. You've got a client who sells a membership program, £95 a month, and didn't think she was making much money from it because £95 dribbling into your bank doesn't seem like a great deal. When I sat down, just took over, sat down and did some costings for her, it was actually her most profitable product. She does other products for £975 a time that she thought was much bigger because, of course,
you get this lump sum in.
15, 20 people paying in £975, super. But when you work out how much money she has to pay to get that. And the thing that people forget to factor in, Sian, is their time. So the £975 one is do you know why it's so profitable for her? Because she actually only has to give about an hour a month of her time. Whereas those £975 ones, it's a week of her time every month. So you have to take that into consideration. And people don't. They don't factor in how much time it takes them.
So it's also about looking at each, if you have more than one product.
Yes.
It's about not making assumptions and actually drilling down and looking at absolutely every single fact that goes into delivering this.
Yep. And of course, everything starts off a bit as, usually we have losses in the first, when we first launch something new. That's understandable. But at the back of your mind, you've got the budget, that ground zero budget that you've got to make. Otherwise, you start missing your rent. Now, ideally, people would have some capital to set them up and keep them going for 3 to 6 months. And that's great. But not everybody does. A lot of people have to hit the ground running very, very quickly. And so you've got to make sure that what you're doing, look at how quickly the cash is going to be generated, look at how quickly you have to pay your suppliers. If your supply terms are that you don't have to pay for 30 days, then don't pay until day 30. A great thing for ladies is, I like to pay all my bills straight away. But of course, then they wait 30 days for their money for the job to come in, if they've got those sort of terms. But they're paying their suppliers immediately, which of course totally throws your cash flow into chaos.
So there's also terms. So what are your terms of sale?
Yes.
When are you going to be asking for payment? What's going to happen if somebody doesn't pay you?
Completely.
Then what are you going to do? Because I think very often as women, we let this sort of thing slip.
Yeah, we do. We do. So I've had a client a couple of weeks ago, just been ripped off by £10,000. She's an interior designer. She went in, she did all the work, blah, 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 blah. The bill was 30 odd grand, all been agreed. They'd had lots of what I call just jobs. Be very careful of that when you're in business.
Can you
while
just...
you're here, could you just do that for me as well? Would you just add this onto my website? Could you just do this in my room? Whatever. And, of course, she didn't keep all that documented. And they said, we're not paying £10,000 of your bill. And she is she's devastated from a personal point of view, emotionally. But actually, from a cash point of view, it's completely stuffed her. Because that's her profit margin and more. Which means that she is actually working at a loss because she's still got to pay all her suppliers. Yeah.
That also, I mean, what you were just talking about also brings in, Adelle, what you spoke about, which is, knowing your hourly rate.
Yes.
Because you can't work out you can't build your time costs in if you don't know what your hourly rate is.
Yeah.
What your salary, in effect, is going to be.
We all start off, my business is called Achieving Clarity. My son who works with me always says, Mum, it's achieving clarity, not achieving charity. Because when I first started, I didn't think anyone was going to pay little old me to do the service. And so, oh, please give me your business. I'll pay you, this sort of thing, that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then it was, oh, okay, I'll charge £25. What? I was paying £1,000 before. Yay, But gradually you build up that bit of confidence and you realise, what? I am worth something. My skills, my knowledge, my experience. You gradually put up your prices. And this is what I say. I have so many clients. I'm going to lose all my business. You put them up gradually. You do a bit of research to see what other people are charging. But, I haven't lost a client because of finances. We, especially ladies, there are quite a few gentlemen in this category as well. We're very underconfident about our worth. Therefore, we go in cheap. And what do we all think when we go in cheap? Would you go and buy something cheap with the 3 prices? We never go for the cheap option, do we? Why? Because we always think that must be inferior in some way.
That's going to break.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's, we need to think about that when we're looking at our own time and our own services.
Adelle, we've got a couple of minutes left. You were going to say something.
You said exactly the same, price increase. I can't actually put my prices up. And you talk, I started off at that and that's my price. And like you said, if the clients are going to be good clients, they will stay. And if not, you'll get churn, which means you can, the next one, at your price increase. Totally. But it's being brave.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think it's also the difference. Do you want 20 clients who are paying you £1,000 or do you want 100 clients that
paying
are...
you 20 quid?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, my chest is rattling away here. Never mind. Wow. So, I think what I've learnt from this is that your accountant is not somebody who just churns the numbers around. Your accountant is somebody who can and should be able to go in if you want and help you with some of your confidence, some of the practicalities of what you're going to charge, of working out if the idea that you've come up with is actually going to stack up financially, or whether at the end of 1 year you're actually going to be running at a loss because there are things that you've forgotten. So they're way more. This is not a person sat there with a calculator adding stuff up.
Completely. Yeah.
But I don't think I think you're unusual, actually. I don't think you're the norm.
But then maybe that's because we need to be empowering people with the confidence to be demanding more.
So we haven't got long left. So I just want to have a quick sort of round the table thing. So, Wendy, you work with loads of women in business. You are a woman in business. What is your top tip for being in business?
Believe that you are worth it and that you can do it, and surround yourself by people who are going to make you feel good and empower you.
Have you got one, Adelle?
I have. Is if you know your hourly rate, say it and stick to it. Do not waver at all.
My thing on that is you say what the price is and then you do not talk. You say nothing, because the first person who talks is the person who you're going to lose.
Yeah, that's so true.
And also, you don't know what that person is thinking. You know, you say, well, it's £500, and they may be thinking, oh, have I got enough money in that account, or shall I move it over?
Yeah, yeah.
If you're assuming that they're thinking, oh, £500, that's ridiculous. What a ridiculous price. I'm not paying that. I'm not paying £500. Who does she think she is? You're making stuff up. You don't know what's in their head.
Yeah, that's right.
Say what your price is and shut up. I was going to add a little rude word in there, but I'm not going to. Okay, I'll tell you what. Wendy, we've got about 25 seconds left. How can people get hold of you? How can they work with you?
Well, we've got a website, of course, at achievingclarity.com, and my, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. So, yeah, all the usual ways, but find the website.
Wendy, Achieving Clarity, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with us. Adelle, Martin, as always, thank you for being my lovely, lovely co-host and keeping the whole thing running. And for this show, Jess is round the corner. Thank you for coming down, Jess. Thank you for listening. Jess is going to be doing the write-up for... She left. I can't see you.
No, she's there.
She's there. Jess is going to be doing the write-up. This is the Women in Business radio show. We will be back next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Tune in next week to the Women in Business radio